The time is just gone 21 minutes past 8, and we kick off this morning looking at the Helen Suzman Foundation, obviously wanting an explanation from the Correctional Services boss, Arthur Fraser, on the reasons behind his decision to place Jacob Zuma on medical parole. Now, the Jacob Zuma saga obviously is not going away since his incarceration, and we've seen the consequences of his incarceration, the looting and the mayhem and the anarchy that had taken place in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. Now his medical parole is coming under the radar, creating a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, but also a lot of concern. And this morning we're joined by legal researcher at the Helen Suzman Foundation, Christopher Fisher. Christopher, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Christopher, looking at the Helen Suzman Foundation, obviously launching a legal challenge in the High Court in Pretoria and expressing huge concerns on the medical parole that was granted to former President Jacob Zuma.
Yes, we had initially written to the National Commissioner to ask for his reasons for the decision to place Mr. Zuma on medical parole. We thought that the decision needed to be transparent and the reasoning made at least public in some sense so that we could hold the commissioner's decision accountable. But that correspondence failed. He didn't send us the record of his decision. So we thought that it was reasonable to assume that absent some direction from a court, he wasn't going to do so. So now we've done that. We've approached the court to ask for the record of the decision, and we've also asked for a timeline to speedily review that decision once we have that record in hand.
Yes. Now, just looking at some of the issues at hand, and it's it seems to be the norm these days, Christopher, where you require answers, where you request a lot more information, and that information is not forthcoming in any way whatsoever. There are no responses, there are no replies, and forcing the hand to go to the courts to obviously get to a situation where you require those answers, where you require those explanations.
Yes, I think it is a pity that this has to be a reality. Government in South Africa is designed to be transparent, and we are not seeing that at the moment. Public officials shouldn't be making these decisions in the dark, and an unfortunate and uncharacteristic secrecy, at least in terms of the aspirations of South African government, have been far too common when these sorts of decisions have been made. So it is unfortunate that we have to go to these lengths to get the record, but I'm sure that I think that the National Commissioner will now have to comply. So at least we'll move one step forward.
Yes. Now, the one issue that the Helen Suzman Foundation is raising is the authorization of the medical parole, saying that it was unconstitutionally authorized, and also looking at the medical parole advisory board that found the condition of the former president as stable, and the decision obviously was overruled by Fraser.
Yes, so that is definitely one of the causes of suspicion that we have in terms of how the decision was made. And it's important to realize there that we raised 2 points effectively about that. That the decision to place an offender on medical parole is a complex decision. So it's made up of 3 considerations. And one of them is a medical consideration. The other 2 are correctional services-based considerations. And we think that in order for the system to operate objectively and without political abuse, that medical decision must be made by the Medical Parole Advisory Board. They are the experts. Mr. Fraser is not a doctor. And in order for that medical parole decision to be made in a objective manner, that medical parole board should have the power to sort of carry the day in that decision. But if Mr. Fraser looks at the act and he can find a power to overrule the board, that can't be done just because he thinks so. There needs to be a rational or a reasonable basis for departing from the panel of experts. And that's why the record is so important, because there must be some reason recorded as to why Mr. Fraser did so. And if those are good reasons, we need to know. But if they're bad reasons, we also need to know.
Yes. Now, just looking at the response by Fraser that we see in the media at this point in time, it's only about his prerogative, and also in terms of the power that that is vested in him to basically overrule this decision. But I'm sure this obviously, Christopher, is not enough.
We don't think that it's enough, no. If we have a situation where the commissioner can override and ignore the medical experts, then we have a system of medical parole that can be abused to let prisoners out of jail before the term of their imprisonment comes to an end. And that undermines the work of the court that happened prior to putting the offender in prison. So we can't have a situation where the sole decision-making power sits with the commissioner, because that is a system open to abuse.
Yes, and also this is obviously a question of law, because legislation is absolutely clear as far as medical parole goes, Christopher.
I think, well, we certainly think so. We think the legislation does point in the direction that we argue in our application. We think that the legislation creates a decision. Well, we think the legislation creates a special role for the medical parole board's opinion, or its findings rather, and we certainly think that is clear.
Yes, and just looking at the timing of this, because this is absolutely important, and time is of the essence, because we're not talking about just any ordinary citizen. We're talking a high-profile former president of the country. We're talking about Jacob Zuma, and I suppose the foundation is looking at the court. The High Court application that you have made, you're looking at it with a sense of urgency, and hopefully the court obviously would recognize how urgent this matter is.
Certainly, urgency is a crucial part of this case, because Mr. Zuma's prison sentence is quite short as it is. So the longer he stays on parole, we risk the fact that he's unlawfully going to get off those months of imprisonment. And as you rightly pointed out, this is quite a serious attempt to if the decision was made unlawfully, this would be a uniquely, it would be a very, very, very momentous kind of avoidance of the rule of law, because it would be a former president avoiding a prison sentence that he should be serving. So every day that the potentially unlawful decision stands is a day where the rule of law does suffer. You are right.
Well, we're watching the space with interest, and obviously we will follow developments with regard to the challenge that the Helen Suzman Foundation has obviously launched at the High Court. So we definitely will follow developments, and I'm sure we will be talking not, in fact, very, very soon, hopefully, once the High Court obviously looks at the issues at hand. But for now, Christopher, thank you very much for your time, and we do appreciate you taking time out and talking to us this morning.
No, thank you for having me.
Christopher Fisher joining us this morning, and he is a legal researcher at the Helen Suzman Foundation, against the background of the medical parole that has been granted to Jacob Zuma, a decision that was overruled by Arthur Fraser, the Correctional Services boss.